1992, Mortal Kombat would see life. 1 year later, Mortal Kombat would evolve to what could possibly be the best iteration a sequel has ever seen, and possibly better than Street Fighter 2. Nearly a decade later, we would see Mortal Kombat Arcade Collection, promised to be an HD overhaul, but instead was just arcade ports, done by a company who may or may not have a good reputation of being accurate. In the year of 2025, one more credit, we get the Mortal Kombat Legacy Collection from the same developers who would bring other classical titles to life. Now, on this wonderful Mortal Tuesday, it is just that. It was a Tuesday. Alright, I was fucking retarded. It is finally time to talk about the Mortal Kombat Legacy Collection that was announced. Now, I actually do have to give some credit for this one, actually, because I did not find this through a Mr. Sparrow Detractor, or finding it in a random comment, or a random Google search, but no. It actually came from a fellow YouTuber, of all people, and not just one from a dull blade in the ranch. No offense, not trying to be rude or anything. This actually comes from a user that goes by Darth Goldust 15. He does some pretty good videos, and I highly encourage you to check him out. So he mentioned to me on Discord of a YouTube video that essentially is the Mortal Kombat... Fuck, I want to call it the Mortal Kombat Arcade Collection, but no. I can't call it the Mortal Kombat Arcade Collection because they already used that title. So, Mortal Kombat Legacy Collection. Yes, because Legacy is surely a great title for a classic collection of arcade games that are pretty easy to emulate nowadays. But before we get into the main meat and potatoes, I want to set the stage of this because I want people to understand just how much I love Mortal Kombat. Now, I did grow up with the Super Nintendo port. Yes, I was one of those people. And yes, I know the Super Nintendo port was heavily censored to the point of being borderline laughable. And yes, I know there was that recent Nitro edition that was a pretty big deal back then, but I don't want to give any form of hostility towards TapMonk99, who was probably one of the community's decent people, especially having a plethora of entertainment on a website known as the Kombat Pavilion. Honestly, there's some really great strips in there, even if a lot of the humor on there is just mostly taking sound bites from other sources and calling it a day.
Finish him, Liu Kang. Indiana Jones wins. Fatality.
Oh, that's cringe.
The point with that Nitro edition, however, is that the fucking ROM hack, if you want to call it, with the dude who supposedly developed it, it looks like a fucking scam. Probably has some Game Genie codes pre-enabled, and they call it the Nitro edition. You would think that this type of ROM, the Nitro edition, would actually have a lot more to show for it, but I'll digress. I do love Mortal Kombat. All of them, really. There's not really a bad Mortal Kombat game in my eyes. Maybe except the two spin-offs that were on PlayStation. Which, jumping a little ahead, they are actually being included in this collection. Which is good for preservation purposes, but their actual quality, unless given the Battletoads treatment on Rare Replay, is certainly not gonna really withstand, honestly. Mortal Kombat Special Forces is just a really shitty character action game with a combo system that's kind of interesting. And Mortal Kombat Mythology Sub-Zero is what Batman Forever did on Super Nintendo. MS-DOS. Yes, it was actually an MS-DOS version that does look and sound significantly better, but the game is still a piece of shit. But yes, whether it be the original Mortal Kombat, the lovable sequel, or the second sequel, Mortal Kombat 3, that honestly had kind of way too many revisions, but I suppose Trilogy is probably the best that we're going to get. and somebody actually got mad at me for saying that, but I don't want to derail this rant any further. We're even playing the surprisingly decent content pack for its time, Mortal Kombat 4, and its Dreamcast exclusive revision, by the way, Mortal Kombat Gold. Now, granted, yes, it's not the best Mortal Kombat, but Mortal Kombat Gold has some things going for it. Even if most of the content is just literally taking Mortal Kombat 2 and 3 assets and just slapping it on the Dreamcast. Also, did you know that the Dreamcast version of Mortal Kombat Gold, yeah, like that matters, had a second revision where they actually fixed the infamous music bug? Just wanted to let you guys know. Then, everything changed when the Mortal Kombat series would dwell into full-on 3D. And yes, I'm not counting Mortal Kombat 4, because a lot of people like to throw in that Mortal Kombat 4 was part of the 3D era, when 1, it was still released in arcades, and 2, it still played as a 2D game. Yes, you had sidestepping, but it didn't really make that much of an impact in the gameplay, though I know you could sidestep certain moves, but the game was still mainly played on a 2D plane. It ain't exactly Tekken, but we'll leave it at that. And also, yes, a lot of the Mortal Kombat games were released in arcades, hence the arcade era, the 3D era, and then the Neversoft era. Mortal Kombat would legitimately explode when it would enter in the 3D era, mainly on the PS2 and the Xbox, and of course everyone's favorite kiddie system, the GameCube, at least. At least of the first 2 games. Mortal Kombat Armageddon will have to wait until it was on the Wii for that. Probably for good reason. The Mortal Kombat games, honestly all of them, even the ones that were on the 3D era, were pretty good. And unfortunately, DW Terminator's Mortal Kombat Deadly Alliance Deception, and I think he did Armageddon reviews, are actually pretty fucking terrible and should be ravenous food for those Doom fanboys who got in this case actually making proper reviews of those games. Chalk went up for Halo, Retro City Rampage, and even his Tribe's Aerial Assault review, which does kind of make me annoyed. Not to sound like an asshole, but he really is one of those FPS games should only be played on PC kind of mindsets, and it definitely shows. Especially with his Halo 2 and 3 reviews. They are really, really terrible. I will agree Halo's overrated, but not for the reason that a lot of people would think. But let's just continue. Then we get Mortal Kombat versus DC Universe. Probably one of the worst Mortal Kombat games, solely because they neutered the fatalities and shit. And then everything changed again when the studio that was once Midway has been quote-unquote reformed, or more likely now regressed, into Mortal Kombat 2011. Now, love or hate the story, or even love or hate the gameplay, Mortal Kombat 2011 was vastly successful for a number of reasons. That being that it played like what Mortal Kombat should have been, not having this 3D crap that was even convoluted in Mortal Kombat vs. DC Universe, having full-on blood and gore that made the series famous, even though people like Forbes Snake mentioning that Liu Kang not doing a finishing move in Mortal Kombat, not Mortal Kombat 1, and even his move returning in Mortal Kombat 2 was a much more interesting way of telling a story compared to the lore that's in Demon Souls. What, you thought I was going to say Dark Souls? But ever since Mortal Kombat 3, every character had some form of finishing move that more or less took the center stage, though most of it is just for humiliation purposes, rituals, and at least in my honest opinion, I do prefer the straight-to-the-point, brisk pacing of the finishing moves compared to the cinematic finishing moves that would give Soul Calibur 4 a run for its money, since that shit tried to copy it and failed it horrendously, but I'll digress. The problem is not the blood and gore. The problem is that the finishing moves, well, they kind of drag on a little bit too long, but whatever. I'm not going to be one of those people. Not today, at least. Mortal Kombat 2011, as most people call it, kind of like with Sonic the Hedgehog 2006, except they don't give it some really autistic name. It was successful for a number of reasons, even if the story was not up to snuff and that the gameplay is, well, subjective. However, the quality of that went down even further with the release of Mortal Kombat X, pretty much for the same reasons, but with a significantly worse story, and then again with Mortal Kombat 11, with an even worse story, and even worse gameplay that would give the original game a run for its money. And then, even worse, when the fucking game got rebooted again, just called Mortal Kombat 1, I think you get the idea. And in fact, Mortal Kombat 1 was so fucking bad that the only way out, instead of using a single action cult weapon of the sort, instead of using that one in the chamber, they decide the easy way out is to just milk off of people's nostalgia like they've always been doing ever since Mortal Kombat X, with its references to the 3D era but never actually using it, and even worse in Mortal Kombat 11, and possibly even worse in Mortal Kombat 1, I'm not too sure. I've only played for the story and I've not touched it since. I don't even play it in local versus. It's just not the ideal, even if Baraka is kind of fun to play with, but everything I said in my cameo rants have standed, and before someone says, why does Street Fighter talk in the Mortal Kombat video, you're fucking stupid if you want to draw parallels out when I have a very good reason to. Mortal Kombat Legacy Collection is doing what Mortal Kombat Arcade Collection failed to do. Having a collection of ROMs of prior, but actually having rollback netcode. Ooh! Yeah, I'm not fucking impressed. Now, yes, it is actually good for once that they're including the original Mortal Kombat 3, but why the fuck are they not including Mortal Kombat Trilogy and Mortal Kombat Gold, the other revisions of other Mortal Kombat games? And before someone says anything about Mortal Kombat Trilogy, first of all, the game is on PC. There have been plenty of compilations nowadays from various systems, whether it would be the Game Boy Advance, the Nintendo DS, various arcade games that were pretty damn hard to emulate back in the day. I'm pretty sure if we were to get a Soul Calibur Legacy Collection or whatever, we'd probably get the arcade version of Soul Calibur 2 that would run pretty damn well. I don't know why this collection is going to be cheapening out on including a version of Trilogy that a lot of people like, unless you're total Mortal Kombat, which in that case I can totally understand, even if I disagree, but at least he's not an arse about it. A lot of people have questioned his integrity as of late, but I'm not going to talk about that. But also the fact that this so-called collection is teasing another series of question marks that could imply anything. And yes, as I mentioned earlier, it is also including the Mortal Kombat spin-offs of Mortal Kombat Special Forces and Mortal Kombat Mythology Sub-Zero, which both of those are PlayStation versions. Remember when Killer Instinct came out and you could play the older version of the game or whatever? How cool would it be to be able to play the older versions of Mortal Kombat with the Rev system and shit? Having a version of Mortal Kombat before Reptile was in the game, or having weird bugs and shit or whatever, just seeing like the various progression of Mortal Kombat and stuff like that. It would be interesting. Or even playable bosses in an actual practice mode. Yes, an actual practice mode. Believe it or not, a lot of the various Mortal Kombat games that were released in arcades do not have a proper practice mode, except for Mortal Kombat 4, believe it or not. Even probably one of the best versions of Ultimate Mortal Kombat 3, simply titled Ultimate Mortal Kombat, despite all the various bells and whistles, it's just enough to keep it arcade pure, but a lot of these various Mortal Kombat ports do not have a thing that's been in fighting games for quite a while now, is a practice mode. I mean, yeah, you can technically use MAME and shit, but that's not really the same thing. I know there's a ROM hack that does let you set up various scenarios and shit for that, but again, not a lot of people are going to have access to it, mainly because patching main ROMs with ROM hacks and shit is a little more convoluted. I could never get it to work. There's probably a way of making it easier, it's just I don't know the method, so I'm going to assume that it's difficult for my own stubborn reasons. I'm going to assume that this collection is just going to have basic things to the arcade mode that's going to make it interesting, like having a move list or a gallery mode where you can view various concept arts, a background mode where you can listen to music or whatever. It's going to be the standard shit that was in the Turtles collection or whatever other collections they worked on. Nothing like being able to play as the bosses, even though a lot of arcade ports have been letting you do that lately. Even Capcom has been doing pretty well with that. Even being able to play as Valgus and Final Valgus in the arcade version of Power Stone is exactly a testament to that. but I'll digress. I have a feeling this version's gonna be pretty damn bare bones, and it's also funny because, as I mentioned, this version is pretty much only there because Mortal Kombat 1 is actually dead, and they want to suck the cash from the fanboys who don't know what Mortal Kombat is, but have a chance to play all the games in one collection. Also, remember when Katana was censored in Fortnite and people were okay with it because Fortnite's a kid's game? Even though, strangely enough, said kid's game has pretty questionable designs from both a sexual and adult narrative. And also having the fact that you have a little skeleton with a spine on it but frozen in ice so that the kids don't know what the hell that is. Come on, people, we're not fucking stupid. We clearly know this is the gore from Mortal Kombat. It's just covered in ice so that the kids won't be bawling their eyes out when they see a skull with a fucking spine on it. Wow, I can't fucking speak today. I guarantee you that this collection may also have the design from Fortnite with characters like Melina and Jade or whatever. I really find it funny that a lot of the problematic stuff of all things in Mortal Kombat is not just the violence, but the sexual design of the characters and shit. When number one, the game is rated M for mature. And number two, there are pretty decent looking women in Mortal Kombat, and they can dress up however the fuck they want. But even if that were the case, this isn't Fire Force, and the characters are actually characters. And they're actually pretty goddamn developed, and not just because of their fucking chests. But no, even Sindel, in the 3D era, after the arcade era and shit, was actually a pretty compelling character. But then everything changed when Ed Boon decided to turn her into fucking girl boss and just essentially kill everyone off, and then basically ruining her entire character in Mortal Kombat 11 to the point where people called her Twindel, because this is not what Sindel would do. It's like the Hank E shit, except not as childish, and there's actually a pretty goddamn good reason that people would do such a thing. But I'll digress on the Hank E shit for now. The only reason this collection is coming out, like I said, is just to make money from people like myself who are tired of the modern Mortal Kombat games, and mainly for those autistic people who only play games online and want to rank up like they're Pokemon, except you probably gain nothing from it. So am I going to be buying this collection? Unless it's on a major discount, and even then, it'll probably be secondhand, just like with the Turtles collection on Xbox, because they can already go fuck themselves for essentially remaking Metal Gear Solid 3 Snake Eater, but after people look at something like Silent Hill 2 and gave Blooper Team of all people their fucking money, I don't expect them to be any more better with that, and especially with whoever is taking the mantle of remaking Mortal Kombat, but for the modern audience who can't be bothered to fucking emulate these old-ass games. So yeah, that's basically it.
Oh, man!
Maybe it might have more effort than a lot of collections these days, and even with the Turtles collection having a pretty damn good selection of games for a fair price, it's still Konami. And I don't give a fuck about how you feel about Delta. You already have the Blue Point version on PC, so play that shit. Now remember, I wasn't completely negative in this video, so don't fucking leave comments how I'm just being a negative piece of shit. I have brought out the positives instead of the negatives. I focus more on the positive energy, because there's always more negative, but positive always wins. They say it's easy to be negative about anything, so I picked the harder route this time. And even if being critical always becomes negative, if I have something to say, I'll fucking say it. I don't give a fuck if it's all about balance. This collection is a fucking cash grab. That's all there is to it. Speaking of shit, I need to put on my pride colors for the day. I wonder if this one's good. Wait a minute. Maps? What the fuck?